Alright, so in this video, I want us to take a look at the HTML elements and that of the HTML attributes. We talked about it in the first video, but we did not actually look at that in detail. So I want us to just give more explanation to what that is in this video and also show you some examples on how to actually use them. Okay, so that is just that. So let's get into the video without wasting more time and then do justice to that. I want to use this video to really explain two powerful concepts that we have in HTML, which we've already gotten into. We're beginning to use them, but we have not provided like nice explanations to them. So I wanted to use this video to just explain that. And that's going to be just HTML elements and that of the HTML attributes. Okay, so we've actually used those two concepts already with the first video that we did when we first wrote our first web page, but we did not actually explain everything in detail. Okay, so I'm going to do that in this. Okay, the first thing I want to take a look at right now is that of the HTML element. So the meaning of HTML element is really very simple. It actually comprises of an opening tag. It also contains element content and also a closing tag. Okay, so we mentioned things like opening tag and closing tag, which we said in the other video that HTML code actually comprises of tags. Okay, so they are actually written in tags. So I'm going to use this title tag that we have in here right now to explain what an element is. Okay, so everything from this place where I just highlighted right now, from the opening tag to that of the closing tag, is an element. Okay, so you can basically call this an element. Okay, and the first thing we have in here, this particular one right here, is an opening tag, and this is the closing tag. Okay, the corresponding closing tag. Now whatever that you find in between these tags is actually called the content element. Okay, so what I have just highlighted, my first website, is actually an element, the content of the element itself. Okay, remember I said that everything from here to here is an element. So this is opening tag and this is closing tag. But what we got right here right now is actually called the content. Okay, that's the content of the element. So that's just what that is. And I think it's also important to mention the fact that there are some tags that don't actually have closing tags. Okay, so there are some tags that actually don't have closing tags, and an example is BR. Okay, so that's line break. So you can do something like this, BR like this, and it's also a tag, but it does not actually have closing tag. And what this actually is going to do is just add a new empty line. So we're going to it's going to basically break that line down. So if you check our browser right now, you see there is a space right here, but if I refresh now, it's going to add more space to that. You see how the content moved down a little bit. So that's just basically what a line break is, BR like this. And we also have another one that is actually called HR, which is for horizontal roller bar. So we can actually add the horizontal roller bar right there. You see that we have a line that just runs through from the left hand side of this screen to the right hand side. Okay, so these are just examples of tags that do not actually have closing tag, and they're also called an element. Okay, so we have another one that is also called IMG. So IMG, and I'm not going to go deep into this particular one, but this is also one of the tags that does not actually have a closing tag. Okay, so you cannot just say because we have our IMG right here that we're going to have a corresponding closing tag that is going to just be something like IMG. Something of this nature like this. Okay, so we do not have that, and the same thing applies to the first one and second one that I just talked about. Okay, so this particular one, which is IMG, we're going to talk about that at a later time. It's going to be a topic, so I'm going to take this away right now. Okay, so, and I hopefully you understand what I just explained about what an element is and what it actually comprises of, which is an opening tag right here. So we can, from here to here is an opening tag, and from here to here is the closing tag. The same thing applies to this paragraph right here. So this is open, this is closed, and what is inside is the contents of that particular element. But everything on this particular line is actually called an element. Okay, so the same explanation goes to the rest of the things that we have in here. All right, so you see these tags that do not actually have closing tags right here, you can actually call them empty tags. Okay, so that's another name that you can actually give to that. You can call them empty tags. All right, so after that, I want to explain one more thing right now, and that's right about what we call nested elements. Okay, when we talk about nested element, HTML element can actually be nested, and that means that elements can actually contain elements. And we have an example of that right here on this page. So if I click on this HTML right here, we see that this HTML tag right here kind of encloses the rest of the things that we have on this particular page. Okay, so it's a kind of encloses all the elements that we have on this particular page, ranging from this particular place down to this place. Okay, so and that's why some people normally they can actually tab this over just for what indentation. So I want to tap this a little bit over to this place like this, and it means that whatever I will have from here up to this place, actually they basically belong. I want to bring this back a little bit. Okay, so everything that we have on this place actually is enclosed in this HTML. Okay, so it just means that we were able to actually nest the rest of the things that we have in here into that of the HTML. Okay, that's an example of nested HTML elements. Okay, so this particular one called body is also a kind of encloses all the H1 and then the P tags that we have in here. So it means that everything on this particular place is actually nested into that. So we can tab this over this way. Okay, so that's just the few explanation I want to give to that right now. And without wasting more time, what we want to do right now is we want to move on to talking about attributes. Okay, but before we talk about attributes, I like to also mention that all of the tags that we have in here that we're using right now, it's a common convention to always be using small letters. Okay, I don't want you to maybe change this body that we have in here. You begin to type that a capital letter, something of this nature. Okay, it may work definitely, but that's not the ideal thing to always do. So I want you to always keep them in the lowercase letters. Okay, so that is just that, like P tag, H1, whatever that you want to, like always keep them in lowercase letters. All right, so let's now talk about that of the attributes. Okay, so if we want to talk about the attributes right now, let's just put something like, let's just get down to this place. Maybe let's say we're having H2 in here, and I say something like HTML attributes. Okay, so that's just basically what I want us to actually talk about right now. So this is going to be H2, and we'll naturally put something like maybe just before this place we can put the horizontal roller bar in here again. All right, so basically let's say we're taking a look at a HTML attribute right here. I want to put this in capital letter. All right, so HTML attributes, they always provide more information about a particular element. Okay, and they are often specified in the opening tags. So for instance, we have an example right here with the HTML that we have in here. So we mentioned the other day that lang is actually an attribute. Okay, so it provides more information. The more information that it's providing with this lang right here means that the language of this particular website is English, and we are basically using US English. Okay, so there's a place where we also made use of an attribute, which is right here under this H1. So we have a style right here. This particular style is an attribute. Okay, so we call this an attribute. It provides more information and more functionality to the HTML element that we have. So for instance, you see that this one, this style actually, while trying to give this particular line a color. Okay, so that's more functionality, that's more information to what is originally there, because originally we were supposed to actually do not have this, we were supposed to have it just this way. Okay, so but we added this particular extra attribute right here just to give more information or more functionality to what is actually found right here. That's why it's actually looked upon as something that provides more information about the particular HTML element. So I hope that you basically understand what an attribute is. So anything that you do to be able to add more information, so you have so many other things like a class. You can add a class to your HTML like this. You can just maybe give that something like call that heading. Okay, so there are quite a lot of things that you can actually do, quite a lot of things that you can actually do. So I'm going to return this to what it used to be. So because we're going to actually talk about classes at a later time, but that's just it by the way. Okay, so another example of an attribute that we can actually talk about right now is that of the title attribute. So let's do that right now. All right, so when we talk about the title attributes, it's just a way of providing a title to a particular, let's say, paragraph or something like heading. It can just be right about any element between that of the heading and that of the paragraph. For instance, this particular line that we're having here right now, we can basically try to add something like a title to it. And if we want to do that, we can go ahead and then add that to the opening tag. Okay, remember that we say that most of these attributes are actually added to the opening tags. Okay, so we're going to just say something like title, and we can just go ahead and set that to, let's say that this is going to be, let's call this is something like, let's say, a title tooltip, something of that nature. Okay, something like a tooltip like that. Let's make sure to spell this right. Title tooltip that way. And if we save this right now, if you want to actually see that title right here, on our browser, you need to like hover on this particular element. Okay, so anytime you hover on this particular element, this particular paragraph, you are going to see that it's going to like display this particular information that we have in here. So let's just check that in our browser. I want to refresh this page right now, and if I bring my mouse button close to that particular title that we just worked on right now, you see that it shows that particular thing in there. So it says this is a title tip. Okay, so this is just one of the ways that you can actually provide more information. Okay, so this is just like a title to this particular thing, and it's actually good for things like SEO. Okay, it's good for SEO. So if you are talking about, you have a heading or you have something like a paragraph that you did not actually like specify the title of that particular paragraph, you can go ahead and add something like a tooltip to just display to the user that this is what this is actually all about. Okay, and it's actually also good for screen readers. Okay, it's actually good for screen readers. That's some browsers that don't actually support images or things of that nature. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about right now is going to be the href attributes. Okay, so I want to basically change this right now. I'll change this to something like href. We're going to just call that href attributes. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is that to actually bring in or to make use of href attributes, in HTML, if you want to create links, we use an anchor tag. Okay, so if I do something like a tag right here, I'm actually expected to close that out with a tag this way. Then in between this place, we can just say something like, we could just call this like link. Okay, if I save this right now and we go to our browser and refresh, you see that that is actually a word that is actually been printed right here. Okay, but that is actually a link. And if you have that link, every link basically, let's just go back to our browser right now, every link should work in such a way that if you hover on it like this or click on it, it should be able to take you to a different place within your website or outside of your website. Okay, so this is just basically how we normally link to other web pages or external website. But if you take a look at this right now, you see that it just looks like a paragraph. Okay, if you click on it, it doesn't take you to anywhere, and that's when attribute actually comes in. So we're going to have to add an attribute that is going to help us tell the browser that this should be able to lead someone to somewhere within the website or outside of the website. So if we go back in here and we want to make use of that particular attribute called href, and we're going to have to put that in small letter or lowercase letter. So I'm going to just say href and then send that to, maybe we're going to just basically, let's say we're sending this to Google. So this is going to be https www.google.com. so let's say that we're just sending someone to this particular URL. I'm not actually connected right now, so if I click on the link in the web page, it should not be able to load the web page, but it should be able to transform the URL to this particular link. So I'm going to save this right now, and if I go back to my browser and refresh, you see that this turns into a link right now. Okay, and on hovering on it, if you take a look at down here, you're going to see that there is a link that is actually being displayed there, showing that that's going to actually go to https://www.google.com. So I'm going to click on it. You see that it tries to open up Google for us. Okay, even though we're not connected, had it been that we're actually connected to the internet right now, it's going to go ahead and load up that particular web page. Okay, so that's the beauty of attribute, guys. That's the beauty of href attribute, and you see how important that actually is. Alright, so for instance, let's say you want to link to a particular page within your web page, you wouldn't need this particular https that we're having here. So we're going to just basically enter the web page itself, and we're going to basically do all of these things as separate topics. Okay, so we don't need to dwell so much on this right now. So I just wanted to use those to explain to you what attributes are. Okay, if you want to change the color, you want to give that an ID, which we're also going to take a look at that. It's actually the things that you should just be adding them as attributes. Okay, so remember I mentioned there's something like a class like this. This is an attribute. We also have another one that is actually called ID. This is also an attribute. So we'll take a look at all these things at a later time. Okay, but this is basically what I wanted to explain, which I did not mention in the last video. That's just the basic HTML elements and that of the HTML attributes. Alright, so if you like what you just watched, it might be the right time to actually subscribe to us if you are watching us from YouTube, and if you're watching this from Facebook, Instagram or X, you can actually click on the follow button to actually follow us, so that each time we release new videos and informative videos of this nature, you won't be left out. Okay, so thanks for watching, and then I'll see you in the next one.